Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive Hobbycast. Daniel here. I hope you are doing well, and if you are not, I hope you are soon. So to continue down the path of science fiction things for the month of May, today's topic is going to be on my top 5 science fiction Japanese animated things. This top 5 list will contain a couple films, 3 films, an OVA series, and a television series. These picks are probably going to date me quite a bit. It'll appeal to my Gen X sensibilities. There's nothing really new on this list. But as far as science fiction goes, my favorite medium for science fiction is Japanese animation. They have a certain quality about them that just captures really kind of everything I look for in science fiction. Interesting worlds, interesting stories, neat ideas, beautiful artistry, and they just tend to do it so damn well. I am only doing a top 5 because 1, I wanted this episode to be a little short. 2, I wanted it to be meaningful. And so over the last week or so, I've been thinking very heavily about, some of my favorite science fiction anime. And I put a list together and I finally picked my top 5. And here is a partial list of the things I didn't pick. So these are things that won't be in my top 5. So if you're expecting one of these, if you are expecting me to talk about one of these, I will apologize right now. So these are the ones that I didn't pick. Dirty Pair, Crusher Joe, Project Acro, Macross Do You Remember Love, anything from Gundam, Cowboy Bebop, Ghost in the Shell, Bubblegum Crisis, Neo Tokyo, Megazone 23, Space Adventure Cobra, Soul Bianca, Isuka 1, Gunbusters, Neon Genesis, Shin Getter Robo, Mazinger Z, Giant Gorg, and Maddox 01. So those were all kinds of some of the things I was thinking about. There were others. Movies I've seen, television shows I've seen, things I own on DVD, things I've watched on television, on Laserdisc in the theater. And so there are some really good things on that list that I didn't pick. And so I think I've narrowed it down to 5 things that I absolutely love. So let's get to it. And the first is a movie, and that movie is from 1988. And that movie is from director Katsuhiro Otomo, and that movie is Akira. I'm probably going to be pronouncing things more in my American style rather than a true Japanese pronunciation. So you'll have to forgive me for that. But Akira is a great kind of cyberpunk government conspiracy kind of movie where you have these warring factions, these biker gangs who are fighting, and they get caught up in this government conspiracy where the government and the military are actually having these warring factions with a group of revolutionaries, and somehow involved are these psychic kids who have this great power that the government is trying to control. The main psychic kid, who is kind of like a godlike figure who can possibly create and destroy entire universes. His name is Akira, and he is a young boy. And one of the biker gangs, Tetsuo, he gets wrapped up in this whole psychic warfare between the kids and the government. And he has a vendetta against Akira, and he wakes up Akira after Akira has been put to sleep. And Akira ends up turning him into a universe or something. It's totally crazy. It's totally wild. And the animation is absolutely gorgeous. One of the biggest unsung heroes of this movie is the music by Shoji Yamashiro. The music is absolutely incredible. Great percussion and vocal work. To this day, I think that it still holds one of the records, the film, for having the most hand-drawn animated cells. It is a stunning production from beginning to end. The reason it's not number 1, the reason it's not higher is I don't think it quite works as a standalone movie. I appreciate it as a version of the comic book, but I bring a lot to my appreciation of to the film Akira because of my appreciation and because I've read the comic book. I was introduced to the comic book pretty early, I think around 1989, when Marvel's imprint Epic, when they started releasing the colorized version, and I still prefer that. That is my favorite way to experience Akira. The film actually was completed before the manga was completed, and the ending of the film is actually about halfway through the comic book series. I was introduced to the movie in late 1988. I had a friend whose dad worked at Marvel Comics, and this guy had a pretty good collection of anime on Laserdisc, and we watched Akira without subtitles and in Japanese, and even not really understanding the story, I still loved it for the animation, for the look, for the sound, for the feel. It is a premier example of a kind of cyberpunk feel. It does a really good job of creating a world that feels on the brink of disaster, a world that feels that it's politically the house of cards that is crumbling, this world that the movie is set in. It's a very good movie. I personally, I really would like to see this made into a series where it could fully examine all of the themes and all of the layers of conflict that exist in the comic book. And for me, that part is missing from the movie, but the movie is so good at everything else that I still had to pick it for one of my top 5. So number 5, coming in from 1988, is Akira. And coming in at number 4, another older movie from 1984. And that is Miyazaki's Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. This is an ecological science fiction story. It is about a planet that has been completely corrupted with pollution, but the planet is healing itself. And in doing so, it is becoming very hostile towards the humankind on the planet. And there are these giant petrified forests that are taking over the planet. They are actually causing the planet to heal. And they are producing these giant insects who are spreading these spores around to produce these huge, huge forests that are poisonous to humans. But there is a young girl named Nausicaa, and she has learned that you can travel into the heart of the forests where the poison no longer exists. And she is learning how to cultivate the plants. She's learning how to communicate with the insects. She is learning how to live in this new hostile environment, while the rest of her people and the other people of the land, they still want to fight against it. And she gets caught up in this very big conflict between these military people and her people, and she has to kind of broker peace. She has to be this bridge between the old ways and the new ways, and teach the people of the world that it is possible to live within this new kind of nature and how to do so. It's a wonderful movie, beautifully animated. Again, it is a movie that has a fantastic score, and that score was written by Joe Hisaishi, who often worked with Miyazaki. I really like his music a lot. This has some fantastic music that I do listen to outside of the film. It has great action. There's a swordsman in the movie named Master Yupa, who is just awesome at the sword. It almost goes into like martial arts cinema in places. It has lots of good chase scenes and airplanes and these airships, but it also has a lot of very quiet and introspective moments. And I like quiet anime quite a bit more than loud anime, although the next entry in the series is a premier example of loud anime. But it's a really nice film. It was originally released in the United States in a highly truncated version called Warriors of the Wind. And I remember renting that and being supremely disappointed that like 40 minutes were cut from it, and there's nothing to cut. It's not like some crazy, it's not like a hentai film, or it doesn't even have like any nudity or really any violence. I'm not sure why they cut it. Maybe just because it was so long. It is a long movie. It is another movie that, like Akira, is based off of a comic book that was actually made by Miyazaki. The comic book is much longer and more in depth, but it's more streamlined in its theming. And so I think Nausicaa, the film, does a better job of translating the entirety of the comic book into a film. And so that's why I placed it above Akira. So number 4 is Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. Number 3 is an OVA series. OVAs are original video animation. So these were things that had a higher budget than a television series, but a lower budget than a movie, and they were released straight to video during the golden age, the great boom of the Japanese economy and the great boom of anime in the late 80s through the mid 90s. Japan's economy, they were on the top of the world. They had just money pouring in. And so a lot of great anime was made during these times because they could invest in it. And that's why now we're kind of seeing a little bit of a cheaper side because they just don't have that kind of money to devote to the artistry anymore. But this was one of the great OVA series, and that was from 1992 to 1998. And only 7 episodes were produced in that time, and that is Giant Robo, The Day the Earth Stood Still. Giant Robo, so it was directed by Yasuhiro Imagawa, and it is like a super melodramatic opera with giant robots in anime form. This is a movie that is, or a series that is very loud. It is very boisterous. Nobody talks normally in this movie. Everybody is yelling all the time, or crying, or on their knees, begging for mercy, begging to be understood. Nobody walks anywhere. Everybody is jumping or flying or diving. There's so much melodrama in this, and it's kind of all about an allegory for like the atomic age. This was the series that kind of popularized the retro future style that is still popular today and gave birth to things like Shin Getter Robo, gave birth to the new Mazinger Z stuff, and probably also gave birth to like that style that you see in Devilman Crybaby, this kind of like retro 70s style, but with some modern sensibilities. But it's all about these two warring factions. And what's really cool about the story is that the good guys and the bad guys are colored in shades of gray. The good guys have done bad things, and the bad guys want some good things. And it's very easy as you're watching it to actually side with both of them. And the young boy, Daisaku Kazama, he's a young boy who controls Giant Robo, and Giant Robo is kind of like his pet, and it's like a giant robot, and he commands Giant Robo by standing on his shoulders and communicating with Giant Robo through his like Dick Tracy style watch. There are other giant robots that are powered with steering wheels. It's all very retro and cool. Lots of steam. It's like atomic age and steampunk all mixed together with giant robots. But he has to deal with a big theme is the sins of the father. Do those taint their offspring? And yeah, it's super good. It took forever for the thing to be finished. I thought I would never actually see the end. I actually saw the first episode at in San Jose in 1993 at Anime Expo. And I saw it and I instantly fell in love, and I just waited for like 9 years or something to finally see the entire series. And I still have it on DVD. I still watch it. It's incredible. It sounds great. It looks great. And it's super entertaining. Excuse me. So that was Giant Robo, The Day the Earth Stood Still. And now number 2, we're going from really loud to really quiet. And it's going to be quiet from here on out. And number 2 is a movie from, what year was that? Forgot to write it down, but it was from 1989, and that is from director Mamoru Oshii, most famous probably for Ghost in the Shell, but that is Patlabor 1, or Patlabor, the movie. Patlabor has been an OVA series. It has been a television series, and it is also a series of 3 movies, with the first 2 directed by Oshii, the third one produced by Oshii and directed by one of his proteges, who I think might have directed Jinro, if I'm not mistaken. But Oshii is one of my favorite directors in both anime and live action. His movie Talking Head is fantastic. He has made so many great movies, but I think Patlabor is his best. It is a very philosophical science fiction movie. So Patlabor, it's about these giant robots that are used for labor. You know, they are cops, they are bulldozers, cranes, they do construction, that kind of thing. And they're piloted by men and women. But in the movie, it's all about the story of a new operating system that is introduced, and it causes the laborers to go kind of crazy. And so the cops, the Patlabor police force, are brought in to investigate what is going on. There is a lot of discussion about operating systems, a lot of discussion about man's relationship with technology, how things can be used to make things better or to make things worse. It's a very slow movie. There's really only like 2 scenes of action in the whole thing. It's a really good mystery. It's a good investigative movie. And it has one of my favorite things about Oshii's movies are these sequences where we get a tour of a city. And there's usually some great music by Kenji Kawai, a composer that works with Oshii a lot. And we get these tours through a city, these slow tours where we just get to view the scenery while listening to really cool music. And there are a couple of those in these movies, in Patlabor, and it's so good. But yeah, if you want something that's slow, thoughtful, quiet, philosophical, and introspective, I can highly recommend Patlabor, the movie. And speaking of slow, speaking of introspective and philosophical, the last number 1 here, the last entry today is from Leiji Matsumoto, and that is a television series from 1978 to 1981. It ran for 6 seasons, and that is Galaxy Express 999. Galaxy Express 999 is a part of the Leiji-verse. So Leiji Matsumoto, he created this entire universe with all of these characters that kind of coexist. His most popular is probably Star Blazers and Captain Harlock, but Galaxy Express 999 is my personal favorite. And it is all about a young boy named Tetsuro. And Tetsuro lives in poverty like a lot of humans do. These humans have kind of been not really enslaved, but they are now governed by these machine people. And Tetsuro's mother is killed by a machine man, and he is left as an orphan. And he is kind of adopted by this strange woman named Maytel. And Maytel pays for his entry onto the Galaxy Express 999. And these the Galaxy Expresses they're trains that travel throughout the solar system, throughout the universe. And all of these trains have different destinations. And the 999's final destination is the planet of Prometheum, where a human can give up his or her human body to become a machine person. And Tetsuro wants to do that so he can get revenge for his mother. And that's kind of like the ongoing plot throughout all of the seasons. But each episode, we have these fantastic, small, little self-contained science fiction stories where Tetsuro and Maytel, they land on a new planet. Most of the episodes are kind of standalone. Some of them are 2 or 3 parters, but they land on a planet and then they have to deal with something. They have to deal with some kind of philosophical quandary, some kind of idea. They're often dealing with death or with poverty, with hunger, with just with like human nature on all of these different planets, and how all of these different science fiction ideas come together to define us as human beings and our place in the solar system, and what it means to be human, and what it means to search for something. And it's a very lofty show. The ideas are big and grand. but it also deals in small personal drama. It's such a fantastic show. When I watch it, I feel like I am wrapped up in a blanket, sitting in front of a fire. It is a super cozy show that just makes me feel good. I'm rewatching it right now, and I tend to watch an episode or two before I go to bed. And I just go to bed with this really good feeling. Makes me feel like old radio dramas like X-1 do. I just feel like I'm experiencing a really high quality work of science fiction. And that is kind of rare in like video media. There's not a lot of science fiction that deals this well with so many great ideas. It was also based off of a comic book, but I have never read the comic. I don't know if the entire comic series has ever been translated into English, and I really have never looked. I love the television series so much. I love the movies. There are 2 movies. The first one is just called Galaxy Express 999. The second is called Adieu Galaxy Express. There are offshoot series with Mattel. There's one called Galaxy Railways. Really, really good. If you want something, if you really like old Star Trek and you want something that gives you that same kind of feeling, that same kind of feeling of humankind going out and exploring the stars and meeting new people, meeting new things, and contemplating our existence while being smart about it, but also not denying our humanity and not denying our more base instincts, Galaxy Express 999 is a great series. The whole thing is available for purchase on Amazon Prime in pretty nice Japanese language with English subtitles. So it's probably the nicest it's ever looked now, and so I'm really happy that it's available like that. And that's how I am watching it now. I've bought all 6 seasons and the 2 main movies on Amazon Prime. All right, guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode here, taking a look at my top 5 Japanese animated science fiction things. And just to recap, that was at number 5 from 1988 is Akira. At number 4 from 1984 is Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. From 1992 to 1998 is the OVA series Giant Robo, The Day the Earth Stood Still. From 1989 is the movie Patlabor. And from 1978 to 1981 is the television series Galaxy Express 999. So, all right, guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed this. Take it easy. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.